Okay, hello everybody. Today we're going to have our first session using Autodesk Revit. Okay, and I have sent you an email with this worksheet. Okay, so you can check that out, and we're going to be following that for this session. So the first thing you're going to want to do is open up the application Revit. So I'm going to go to my Start menu and select Revit 2022. Okay, so that's going to load up Revit 2022. So we're going to be working on the Dean Park House building in this session, and we're going to be creating the overall grid and structure, some columns and some walls in this first session. Okay, so when you load up Revit for the first time, this is what you're going to see. We've got a lot of different options, maybe some examples, different files that you can check those out. There's different types, models and families. We can see a section models. We're going to create a model. We'll be talking about families later on, and we need to create a brand new project, and to do that we're going to click on new, and then from the new project dialog we're going to select architectural template and click OK. We always use architectural template normally, so I'm going to press OK. So this is going to load up our architectural template. So there's a bunch of things here sorted out for us. There's a lot of information, and we're going to explore the user interface as we go. One of the things that I like to do is change the position of these things. We've got these nice wide screens at the university, so I'm going to use the space a little bit better. So down here we have properties, and we also have the project browser. Now these are two really important sections of our user interface, and they do get a lot longer, and there's a lot of information in there that we need. So I'm going to move my project browser. I'm going to click on that and drag it over to this side of the screen and highlight it just there. Okay, so now I can see my properties fully. I can scroll down and I can see my project browser that is going to grow and expand as we do the project. I can see that clearly there. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is look at level 0. This is our first floor plan. This is our ground floor plan for Dean Park House. So on here we have our elevations. These are symbols that denote our elevations: north, east, south, west, and they're going to be very useful to us, but I need to change the position of these because the Dean Park House is kind of wide and narrow. So it's got a long length here, but it's not got a long length here. So I'm going to move our elevation symbols. So I'm going to just drag those out a little bit. Okay, you don't have to be super accurate, you just click on it and then click and drag to move the position of those. Now it's important to note that each of these elevations actually have a view range, and we've got to make sure that those are still correct. So we can see that the range that you see from this west elevation is between this solid line and this dashed line. So I'm going to move the solid line back to around there, and I'm going to stretch out the dashed line to about there. Now if I click on the point of this symbol, same thing, just grab the solid line, move that across, grab the dashed line, bring that over to this, and now everything is clear. So this is my space, my floor plan area, ready for us to start constructing our building. And a really good way to do that for this project is to use a grid. Now you don't have to start with a grid inside of Revit. Okay, you can start putting walls and different objects in, but this project gives us a good opportunity to add a grid and to try out some of the benefits of using a grid inside of our design. So the grid tool is under the architecture tab. So you can see at the top of the screen we have all these different tabs: architecture, structure, steel, precast, systems, and on. And we're going to be using the architecture tab quite a lot because it's got the wall tool, the door tool, the window tool, lots of things that we're going to find very useful. And further along we have the grid tool. Okay, so we're going to draw a grid that's going to help us with our project, and this allows us to draw grid lines. So I'm going to click from about here and across, and you can see the number 1 grid line there is written. Now I'm going to be referring to this worksheet, okay, so there's some details and measurements that are going to be very useful for you for this project. Okay, so that's our first grid line. We don't have to be too specific about where we position that one, but if I want to draw a second grid line, which I do, I need to make sure that the distance between those grid lines is correct for our building. So in this case, the second grid line is actually going to exist at 6,360 millimeters away from the first one. So I can actually type that in. You see how I'm hovering here and a dashed line appears? I can actually type in that number again. So 6360 and enter, and that ensures that the distance is correct between those two grid lines. And you also see that as I drag that line across, there's a dashed line that appears again, and it sort of snaps into position. You want that because that's going to help us to move several grid lines at the same time later if we need to. So that's number 2 grid line. Let's go back to the right hand side and do our final grid line in this direction. Okay, so our grid is actually going to be 3 by 7. Okay, so the distance for this grid line is 5370, okay, which is actually on the worksheet. Press enter, and now I can draw that final grid line, snap it into position, and there are those 3 lines. Okay, so now I'm going to start to draw some other grid lines in a different direction from the bottom to the top. So I'm going to click from here to here, and you can see that it's added the number 4 just like the others, 1, 2, 3 and 4. Now I have an opportunity here to change that from a 4 to a capital A and press enter, which means that my next grid line, if I position my cursor at the bottom ready to get the correct distance is 6270. 6270, enter, and you can see that this grid line is snapping into position and it says B. Okay, this is good, and we can carry on from here. The next distance is now 4550. 4550, enter, and I can add grid line C, making sure that it's perpendicular, everything's straight. So let's do this again. So the next distance, they're all going to be 4550. So 4550, enter, and we've got grid line D, and then again 4550, enter, E. We're going all the way to G. So 4550, let's have F in there, and another one, 4550, enter, and there's G. Fantastic. So this is our grid sorted out. Now I'm going to tidy this up just a little bit by using the modify tool. I'm going to click on the end here, and I'm just going to click in this little purple circle, and it's going to allow me just to change the position of the grid a little bit. Now let's see if we can highlight all of these grid lines and just position them more sort of in the middle, something like that. Okay, that's looking pretty good. That's our grid sorted out. Okay, so at this point we might want to save our file, which is a good idea. So I could go to File, Save As, and I'm going to save this as a project, and I've got my Save As dialog here. I'm going to save to my desktop, and I'm going to change the name from project to DPH Project 01. Okay, so Dean Park House Project 01. You can call it something more relevant to you, that's fine. And I'm saving to the desktop, click Save. Okay, so Revit will ask you to save your document in regular intervals. Okay, so you do want to make sure you're saving, and as you go, save as different versions just in case you need to go back to a previous backup. Okay, so we've got our grid set up just here, and I'm going to add some columns. We're going to add some structural columns to this project, and we do that by going to the Architecture tab and clicking on the drop down under column and choosing structural column. And the default column is not the right column for this project, so I'm going to choose edit type. Now that brings up this dialog box just here, okay, and we need to load in some different columns for our project, because we've got like concrete square columns that we need for this project. Now before you do this, just a note, if you are using your own laptop, okay, you'll need to install the content for Revit. Okay, so I'm just going to open up the correct page to help you find that here. So I've got Chrome open here, and this is the page you need. So Autodesk Revit 2022 content. I downloaded the UK English content for Revit 2022, and that installs it automatically in the right place. That's 565 megabytes, and it gives us loads of templates and families that we can use in our project, so that's going to be quite useful. Okay, so back in to Revit, let's load one of those families. So we're going to load the correct column in here, and I'm just going to go back to the right position so you can see. So we have our program data files, and there's an Autodesk folder, and we need to be looking inside of RVT Revit 2022, and then going to Libraries English UK, and down the list we're looking for structural columns, and inside structural columns there is a folder which is called concrete, and inside of there we need concrete square. Okay, so I'm going to click open on the square, and now I have our column, but that's not all. We need to modify this, so I'm going to duplicate this column, and I'm going to change the name of it. Instead of 300 by 300 mil to, I'm going to add in our initials at the beginning, Dean Park House, DPH 300 by 300. Now actually our column is a very specific 320 by 320. Okay, so that's just the name I've changed there, so I need to change the dimension also. So I'm just going to click in here, 320, press OK, and I now have a column that I can use in our project, and we need to be placing those columns here so you can see them snap into place. Now when I pressed that column, you see I got this warning at the bottom of the screen. This structural element is actually starting from depth, so I'm going to undo that. I'm going to press Control Z, and I'm going to change one thing up here. So we've got little options for our columns, and I'm going to change it from depth to height, and that means that when I draw my columns in here, I'm not going to get any warnings. They're all snapping into position, and let's put one just here, 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 and they're all snapping into position. Just a few more, and you'll notice that I haven't got a column on A1 or B1 or A2 or B2 or A3, but I have got them on all the other cross sections of our grid. Okay, so there is our column. Now this is a good point to press escape and take a look in our 3D view. So I'm going to double click inside of my project browser, 3D, and you can see there are my columns. Now I can rotate around my project using the middle mouse and the shift key to have a look around and see all of my columns in position. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is go back to level 0, and I think now is a good time to add some walls. So to add walls to our project, we're going to click on the wall tool, and I'm going to choose one of the basic walls inside of Revit already pre-existing. Okay, so I'm going to choose this one here. Okay, and we're going to use this as an opportunity to modify this wall, okay, and make it exactly how we want it to be for our project. So again, we press edit type, we've got our basic wall, and it currently has 22 mil on the render, 100 block work, an air gap, an insulation, and some more information there. So again, I'm going to duplicate this wall and make some changes. So our wall is going to be, at the end, it's going to be 12.5 on the plasterboard. It's going to be 100 block work. It's going to be an increase of 50 on the insulation, and the air gap is actually going to be a very specific 57.5. Accuracy is really important. Okay, and then 100 mil on the block work, and we're going to have 50 mil on the render. So 50, there we go. So again, I'm just changing the name. Be useful to put our initials at the front again so we can associate the walls and the columns with the project. So I'm going to add Dean Park House, DPH, and click OK. Now all I've done there is change the name of this wall, so I do need to edit the structure of this wall. Okay, so I need to make sure that that finish is again 50 for the render on the outside, and I've got 100 mil block work. Then I've got the air is 57.5, okay, for that gap, 50 mil for the insulation, and then I've got my core layers. I've got concrete, 100 mil on the block work, and 12.5, and that is all correct. Okay, so that is my Dean Park House wall set up. So this is now a good time to save. So I'm just saving the project, and now we're going to draw our wall. Now when you're drawing a wall inside of Revit, you want to draw it in a clockwise fashion. And one last thing I want to do with this wall is have an offset of 25 millimeters. Okay, so I had an option just up here to change the offset of the wall. I'm going to draw somewhere in between B and C, and I'm going to snap to my column just here. Now Dean Park House does have like a notch coming out on the east side, so let's just add that in there. Let's go to the middle of that column, and we'll follow this around to you can check your worksheet as you go, and then it notches out all the way to our grid line A, and then back to the beginning. Okay, once you've done that, you can press escape, and there is our wall. Let's have another look in 3D view, and there it is. There's our wall. Okay, and the heights and the columns, they can all be adjusted, and we'll be talking about that. But before we finish this session, we should briefly look at dimensions, because dimensions are very useful for making sure that our walls are the right lengths and all that sort of stuff, and we can use dimensions to model in our project. So you can see the dimensions on the worksheet. okay, and we can add those. So I'm going to start with the notch on the west side, okay, and I need to add a dimension. So to do this, we go to the Modify tab, and we're going to use an aligned dimension, this tool here. If you hover over any of the tools, they're going to give you a drop down. They might show you a little animation of how that tool works. So we're going to use an aligned dimension. Now if I hover over a wall, you can see that it automatically snaps to the center line of that wall. But if I want my dimension to go to the outside, I need to press my tab key once, and you can now see that my dimensions attached to the outside edge, and I want to attach that to the outside edge here as well. So I've got a dimension that I'm just going to place just here. Okay, so the distance from this outside edge to this outside edge is currently 8,470, and that should actually be 8,595. Okay, so the rule with using dimensions to move walls and stuff like that is we have to select the part that we want to move. So I'm going to select this wall here, and you can now see that the number is blue, and that means we can edit it. So the number that I need is 8595, 8595, and if I press enter, you can see that it's made a small adjustment to that wall here. So let's do that again. Let's add another dimension. So we're going to use add another dimension. Here's the dimension tool, and we're going to select this this outside edge. So I'm pressing tab, and I'm going to select this outside edge, tab once and click, and here we go. So we currently have a dimension of 2230, and this is actually the main entrance to the building. This needs to be 1340. So I'm going to select this wall because this is the one I want to move. The numbers are now blue, and let's type in that dimension, 1340, 1340, enter. Okay, so now we know that those walls are in the correct position. Okay, so coming along to this bottom part of the notch. Okay, so if I use my dimension tool again, so I'm pressing tab once, click, tab once, click, there is my dimension. This one should be 6270, because that is the outside edge of the wall. Now I'm looking at this, and I think I'm going to leave that one as is, but I am going to check the other one, which should be 3,400. So let's add a dimension just here. So I'm going to press tab key once, and then tab key once there, and that's 3,000. Let's do that again because I added an extra dimension by accident. So tab key there, tab key there. Okay, so let's select this wall here, and we'll type in 3,400, 3400, enter. Okay, that's looking good. So and I do want to make sure that this one is correct, so I'm going to just make that adjustment, 6270, 6270, enter. Okay, so that's just taken the offset off a little bit there, which is fine because we haven't got any columns in there. Alright, so that's how we can use dimensions. So let's use dimensions over on this side. So the same thing, using your align dimension tool, using the tab key to click on the outside edge. There we go, 2,700, and that distance should be 2,700, so that's spot on. Okay, and then we're going to use the dimension tool again, so tab and tab again. Okay, so this one needs to be different. This one needs to be much smaller, 1340. So I'm going to use the modify tool to select the wall that I want to move and put in 1340. There we go, that's much better. And then the part at the bottom, let's check the dimension there. So let's get that align dimension tool again. Select the outside edge using tab. Select this outside edge using tab. And then I can choose the wall that I want to move. Click on the number and we're going to type in 5370 here. 5370. Enter. And that aligns it perfectly with that column, which looks really good. Now, some of these lines get a bit bold as we're getting closer. We can change them to thin lines, and you can see how well everything fits the columns with the edge of the plasterboard. Everything's looking very smart. Okay, so that is our floor plan with the dimensions done correctly. Okay, so and that's everything that we wanted to cover in this session. So in the next session, we're going to be adding in our walls, our roofs, our floors, our ceilings. Okay, you can take a look at the worksheet. It does talk briefly about those, but we'll be adding those in the next video. So thanks for watching, and I will see you tomorrow.